Coming up on today's video, crucial injury updates from all 20 Premier League teams, swapping Haaland for Salah, which forward you should buy, and much, much more. Welcome to FPL Mate, my name is Dan. It's time to lock in those final decisions for Game Week 10. So we'll start off, as we always do, with all of the injury news ahead of the game week. And I've gone through all of the press conferences today, and this is what I have found out. So, starting off with the first opening early fixture for game week 10. Newcastle face Arsenal. And for Newcastle, Gordon and Isak have niggling injuries, apparently, and will be assessed. They've got kind of longer term issues that hopefully they are starting to get over. So, it's not that they're definitely going to be out, but there's a good chance that they could be rested. Murphy will be out this game week, however, with a short-term issue. Botman, Trippier, Wilson, Lascelles and Target are all still out. For Arsenal, Gabriel hasn't trained up until today, but if he does train today, he will be available. Now, that is the quote from Mikel Arteta. I have it on good authority that Gabriel did train today, which does suggest he will be available to play this game week. But I'm not quite comfortable putting him down as a tick because, of course, Arteta can mislead us at times. So, yeah, Gabriel did train today. That suggests he'll be available. I cannot tell you for sure that he will be available, however. But I think that's pretty good news. I think we can be optimistic about Gabriel this week. White also hasn't trained. He's got a joint issue at the moment. And Odegaard, Calafiori, Tierney and Tomiyasu are all confirmed out for Game Week 10. For Bournemouth, Kepa, Scott and Sinisterra are all ruled out of Game Week 10. Ouattara is doubtful, but he could still potentially feature, and Billing is available following illness. I think the biggest news here is Kepa being unavailable means Travers will be the goalkeeper for Bournemouth. Could that give some more opportunities for Man City if they are playing with a slightly weaker goalkeeper? Well, Man City do have some problems of their own. De Bruyne, Grealish and Walker are not expected back until Game Week 12, and Doku could be out for even longer. Akanji, Diaz and Savinha are also doubtful, but their issues are not serious, so if they are out for this game week, it's not thought to be for a very long time. I think all players do have a chance of featuring, judging by what we've seen so far over the last couple of days. Gvardiol did have some adductor pain in the midweek fixture after coming on as a substitute, but he apparently is feeling good now, so small concern about him, but again, another player I feel we can be fairly optimistic on. The final point on Man City is that Erling Haaland had a full rest in the midweek, so that should mean that he should be ready to go for this Bournemouth fixture. More on Erling Haaland and what you should be doing with him later on in the video. For Ipswich, Hutchinson, Johnson and Luongo and Morsey are all available. They've trained this week. Greaves, Taylor and Tuanzebe remain out, and Ogbene will be out for the rest of the season following Achilles surgery that he had this week. For Leicester, Fatawu is doubtful due to a groin issue. Adak and Chowdhury are back in training, so small warning if you are a Vardy owner, Daka could see some minutes in the near future. Maybe this week is a little too early for Daka to get a start, however. Only just returned from a very long injury layoff. Stolazic is the only player who is definitely out for Leicester this week. For Liverpool, Alisson, Diogo Jota, Chiesa and Elliott remain out. Bradley, however, is available, and Robertson, just a warning here, played 90 minutes in a second string cup team during the midweek, which may suggest that Tsimikas might be starting this weekend against Brighton. Conflicting messages in the press conferences from Slot. Slot did seem to be protecting Robertson with his comments, but I'm a little bit concerned about potential rotation moving forward for Robertson. And Tsimikas, I don't think he is an automatic player to have in FPL, because I think there might be some rotation between both Robertson and Tsimikas each game week. I don't think either one of them is nailed at this moment, so would not be looking to have either of these two players in my FPL team right now. For Brighton, João Pedro, he's back a little bit earlier than expected. O'Reilly is also back in training. These players will be available for this game week, so with Brighton's fixtures looking good from game week 12 onwards, we might have to have another little look at the 5.4 million João Pedro penalty taker extraordinaire. Dunk will be assessed, but reportedly he is going to be out for a few weeks actually. So even though there's been no comment from manager Hertzler on Dunk to suggest that he will be available or unavailable, the rumours are saying that he is unavailable. So big warning there. Minter, probably not back. March, Milner, Webster are all out. Nottingham Forest next, and Wood, Jota, Gibbs-White and Anderson will be assessed. It looks most likely that Wood and Jota will be available for this game week. They are both carrying knocks, but they do have the potential to play. It's not for sure. If you are a Wood owner, I would be a little bit concerned, but maybe this is enough to put you off a Wood transfer if you were thinking about going for him before. Danilo and Sangare are still out, and Ward-Prowse cannot face his parent club, West Ham United. And speaking of West Ham United, Fulkrog is still unavailable. He has no return date, and Kudus still has 2 games remaining of his suspension. So he is going to be out until game week 12. Yeah, a lot of players coming back in game week 12, by the way, and even more to come. For Southampton, Bazunu, Smallbone and Stewart remain out. Fraser is ill, but he will be assessed. Don't know how much assessment you need on an illness, but he could be back for this Everton game, potentially. And as for Everton, McNeil has not trained, but still has a chance to play. Decore also had a situation, but he has been training. One note on McNeil is that apparently, according to Everton fans, I don't know if there's any Everton fans that would like to back this up, but I have heard them say this in the past, that Sean Dyche doesn't like to rush back his players from injury, and if there is an issue there, it's usually an indication that they will be given a little bit of time off. So that is the general consensus among Everton fans, not just now, but historically as well. Sean Dyche doesn't like to rush players back, so if there is a flag on an Everton player, it's usually bad news. Broja, Shamiti, Garner and Irabunum are all still out. Moving on. For Wolves, Johnston is available following an adductor injury. Lamine has trained and likely available. Hechan, Kalajic, Mosquera, Gonzalez and Traore are all still out. Interesting point on Johnston is that Jose Sa has been playing quite well, and even if Johnston is available, I don't know if Sa necessarily loses his place. So we'll have to see what happens there, but I think both of these goalkeepers are a little bit risky at this moment. For Crystal Palace, Eza is out until game week 12 with a hamstring injury he picked up in the midweek League Cup game, so bad news on the Eze front. Again, game week 12 is the target return date. Decore has returned to fitness and is available. Franca, Lerma, Riyadh, Richards, Lerma, put Lerma in here twice for some reason, and Wharton are all out for this game week and beyond. For Spurs, Son has trained and should be okay for this game week. Good news for those of you who did take a punt on Son a couple of weeks ago, despite the bad news in game week 9. He should be okay for this week, according to Ange Postecoglou. Van der Ven will probably be out until game week 12, shock. However, so Van der Ven owners, bad news there. He's missing the next 2 fixtures. After that, game week 12 is against Man City. So that probably means Van der Ven is a sell unless you can just bench him for a few weeks. Odegaard remains out with a hamstring injury. And as for Aston Villa, Barkley is out until game week 12 with a small injury, and everyone else is available. Aston Villa getting stronger and stronger with each game week in terms of their squad fitness. Very nice. For Manchester United, not too much injury chat because obviously interim manager Ruud van Nistelrooy was taking the press conference, and a lot of the talk was about, you know, the changes of management at Manchester United. So we didn't really get too much news there. However, we do know that Anthony, Eriksson, Maguire, Mainu, Malacia, Mount and Euro are still on Manchester United's injury list. And as for Chelsea, everyone is fit. Yes, literally everyone is available for Chelsea right now. A huge squad, and everyone's good to go. Good news there. However, one small issue. Sancho is ineligible to face his parent club, Manchester United. Sancho's fit. He's just unavailable because he is tied. He cannot play against his parent club. So, moving on. Final fixture, the Monday fixture. And that is Fulham against Brentford. We've got to wait a while for this big clash. I'm sure a few of you guys have got some players in this game as well. For Fulham, Castagna is back in training and available. Andreas is also available following an injury he sustained last game week. And Lukic is the only unavailable player. He will be out until game week 12 at the earliest. So there we have it. Fulham getting back to Fulham things, Fulham ways, with a lot of fitness all around their club. As for Brentford, Norgard is available after a midweek rest. Aja has trained and is likely available as well. As for Henry, Nunes and Thiago, they're all close to returning. They are coming back to training now, which is really, really good stuff. But game week 10 is probably too soon to see them back in the starting 11 or indeed the bench. bench. But keep an eye on these guys. We could see some more players returning to Brentford very, very soon. So hopefully by now, guys, you have been trying out Sleeper and making your game predictions using this app and putting yourself in for a chance of some prizes. But if just in case you haven't checked out the Champions League version, the UCL prize pools are quite nice, actually. So if you join a sponsored prize pool, I'm in prize pool 7, for example, and you start making predictions on who you think are going to win, lose, and draw each game in the Champions League, Sleeper are giving away thousands of dollars worth of prizes every Champions League week as well, which is absolutely crazy. Now, I don't know too much about European football. It's not my speciality, so I'm giving it a go. But if anyone thinks they can predict these results a little bit better than me, then you could be in to win a lot of money, or well, worth of prizes. It really is insane. So check it out, guys. Link in the top of the description, or you can use the QR code on screen and you'll be in for a chance of winning. So get involved, guys. Come and compete with me and many other managers and see who can predict those European football games the best. But back to FPL, and we do need to have a look at these clean sheet odds for Game Week 10. If you're wondering which defenders to play, this might be very, very useful. Might be helpful for making defensive transfers as well. But looking through these odds here, Liverpool and Man City stand at the top here as the best chances of a clean sheet for Game Week 10. Both Liverpool and Man City with a 34% chance here. They play Brighton at home and Bournemouth away, respectively. So these are your secure clean sheet odds if you're looking for them. The other premium defenders will be coming from Arsenal, who have a 31% chance of keeping a clean sheet against Newcastle, so pretty nice there. But if we look down at some of the cheaper options, there's actually quite a lot of potentially cheap defenders with decent chances of clean sheets here. Forest have a 29% chance, Fulham 27%, Ipswich, Palace and Wolves with a 25% chance, and Everton and Southampton, you know, if you've got a Harwood Bellis or a Mikalenko, these each have a 24% chance of a clean sheet, which is actually really rather nice here. So yeah, guys, if you have some of those cheap defenders and you're worried about the injuries or rotations with your starting defenders, maybe just going to your bench and using one of your bench defenders might be an option for you, might be able to help you out a little bit here. So yeah, I wanted to put that one out there. In terms of those teams not so likely to keep a clean sheet, Brentford, Aston Villa, Bournemouth, Brighton, not looking too hot this game week. So do be aware of those teams if you do have defenders from them. But I want to have a look at some goal scorer odds as well. And as always, we are going to see Haaland #1 for projected goals for Game Week 10. Remember, guys, these are spread market odds. So it's a really, really good idea to get a rough guide on the projected goals for this game week. And we've got some interesting ones here. So yes, Haaland always at top, but Salah not super far behind him. 0.71 projected goals for Salah. So decent chance of a goal from him against Brighton. Would, if he's available, and these odds are based on the player starting the game, 0.53 projected goals there, very nice. Darwin 0.57. Raul Jimenez is probably the one that stands out to me here the most, though. He plays against Brentford at home, who have been weak defensively, and he's got 0.52 projected goals. Very, very nice indeed. Going down this list, there's a few other noteworthy players. We've got Palmer with decent chance here as well. Archer is quite interesting here. Didn't expect to see him on this list this week. And some of the cheaper forwards, such as Delap and Vardy. I know some people are thinking about selling these guys, but they've actually got better goal scoring odds here than the likes of Cunha, Strand Larsen and Wissa, who I know a lot of people are actually looking to buy this week. So yes, there are a lot of cheap forwards in the game right now, but in immediate Game Week 10, maybe what you have already is even better than what you could potentially get. And that is a real warning there. And I think Wolves not projected to score too many goals. Neither are Brentford, for example, against Fulham. That's why we don't see Mbermo on this list either. But these are the highest projected goal scorer odds. Of course, you need to factor in assists and your own opinion and analysis of this kind of projection. Let's move on, because I want to talk about these cheap forwards in a little bit more detail. And what I've got here is the most popular cheap forwards, I would say, at the moment. The only player maybe missing from this list is Delap. By the way, Delap would be bottom of this table, and the table is ordered by expected points so far this season per start. So expected points is a stat used on Fantasy Football Hub's Opta Stats tool, where we can have a look at some of the analytics stuff. I find it really useful to look at expected points to give a rough guideline on who is, who is doing the most FPL scoring based actions. So whether that's who is likely to get goals, assists, bonus points is all factored in here as well. And it puts it all together to give a rough estimate of how many points you would have expected a player to get based on their actions on a football pitch. After that, you can start factoring in what is a priority to you. Have the players had enough penalties, or, are they penalty takers? You can factor in if you like the fixtures or not. And you can go from there. But I like this as a starting point. And in terms of players with the highest expected points, so putting up the best general FPL related stats so far this season, per start are Raul Jimenez, 5.7, Archer 5.7, and Wissa 5.7. Now, we do need to factor in things like finishing ability, and Archer is going to be a little bit lower than some of the other guys. He's also got a smaller sample size because he's only started 4 games. So again, that is something we like to factor in. We have, after that, players who I would maybe call the overperformers, and that is Welbeck, Cunha, and Wood. They have been getting a lot of FPL points, but actually their data is just a little bit weaker than the likes of Raul Jimenez and Wissa, for example. But you could maybe say, are they better finishers? That is definitely a factor. After that, lower down the table, Calvert-Lewin, João Pedro, Vardy, and at the bottom, actually, is Strand Larsen. And I know a lot of people are looking at Strand Larsen, but his data is quite a lot worse than a lot of the other players on this list. So with that, we next need to look at fixtures. You would probably say that Raul Jimenez has the best fixture of all of these players in the immediate term in Game Week 10. Vardy up there as well. Maybe Wood if he is available. But over the next 4 game weeks, it looks like Fulham, Brentford here as well. There's a couple of teams with decent Wolves, of course. A couple of teams here that do have decent fixtures coming up. So it's up to you. Who you like, what is your budget? I would say that Raul Jimenez from this looks like the best pick if you're looking for the next block of 4 fixtures. One interesting note on Raul Jimenez is that he rotates very nicely with Rodgers. So when Raul Jimenez has some difficult fixtures in between some very nice fixtures over the next 10 to 12 game weeks, actually he rotates really nicely with a player like Rodgers in those more difficult fixtures. So something definitely to be aware of there. Actually, Rodgers rotates well with Wood as well. If you're looking for a player to play every single game week for a very long time, then maybe Cunha is the answer to you. But again, this is all going to be strategy dependent. Do you need someone to play every single game week? Are you looking just for the short term? Do you prefer to pick a set and forget player? Are you willing to use transfers every 4 or 5 game weeks to continue to switch between these cheap forwards to target the best fixtures? So much to take into consideration. For my personal opinion, if I was buying a new cheap forward right now, I would go for Raul Jimenez. But that's not to say that players like Wissa, Welbeck, Cunha, and even Vardy, who has got to come into the conversation soon, can't be good options. Wood is probably dropped off it a little bit if he is unavailable for the West Ham game. After that, his fixtures do dip quite considerably, and he has been overperforming his data by quite a lot. So I do have a small concern about Wood. Everyone else looking very, very good, who we mentioned. Obviously, there's going to be a few players here that you might want to avoid, like the likes of Calvert-Lewin, Vardy, maybe some question marks around João Pedro and Strand Larsen, but options if you really need to go super cheap. I think I've spoken enough about those cheap forwards now, and hopefully that helps you make your decision for Game Week 10. Right, here is another big discussion this week. People thinking about selling Haaland in order to sell Salah. And first of all, I should put this out here. I want to go on record and say that I'm not too keen on this move. I think it's a bit of a luxury move, and I'm sure for most people, there are going to be other transfers that are more worth making than swapping Haaland to Salah. I'm not going to do this myself, but if you are very keen to sell Haaland and replace him with Salah, then these are probably the ways I would do it. So I've made, I guess, a couple of tables here. Players I would consider selling. So obviously you're going to sell Haaland and a midfielder and buy Salah and a forward. If you are selling certain midfielders, maybe like an injured midfielder, or a really cheap midfielder like Winks, or, you know, a player who you probably don't want, like Kovacic or Ahmad or maybe Andreas or Carvalho, then I would consider doing this move if you really want to make the move. Only if you have no other issues. Outside of that, there's a lot of players that I don't think I would like to get rid of. McNeil, for example, I would you know, I'll do it for free perhaps, but for a hit, bit of a question mark over there. Smith Rowe, no way I would be selling Smith Rowe right now. Really like the fixture against Brentford. I guess you can just look through here. Of course, we've got the same on the other side, which forwards I would be more willing to buy as part of that double transfer. But I'm not too keen on this move personally. I think Haaland and Salah will score a similar amount of points over the coming game weeks. And really, Salah has better fixtures than Haaland over the next 3. But after that, you know, there's really not much between them, to be honest. So I don't think there'll be too much difference. Salah's data, it has been boosted a little bit by penalties recently. I don't know. It's a difficult one because people feel very passionate about this one. I don't want to make any decisions for anyone. It's not something I would do, but I appreciate that other people will feel very differently to me, and that's fine too. Particularly this season, there's no right or wrong way to play FPL, and it's just going to be about your preference here, which is terrible for FPL videos when a lot of people just want me to tell them what to do. I don't really like that kind of way of thinking, though. There's always going to be plenty of options, and I feel like you've got to go with your own gut a little bit here and your own opinions. So following on from that conversation, I think this is where things get quite interesting. So what I've done today is I have looked up all of the top players, all of the fixtures over the next 6 game weeks and tried to identify who are the best captain options for this period. And over the next 3, indeed, Salah looks like he is going to be the better captain option for the next 3 game weeks, particularly when compared to Haaland. You know, Salah is probably the best in game week 10 and 12. Haaland is probably the better one in 11. So there we have it. I'm sure some people will disagree with this, and, you know, maybe your order is slightly different to mine, but I think that Salah is better for the next 3 game weeks generally, but Haaland not too far behind. I still think Haaland is very much a captain option in each of the next 3 game weeks. After that, game week 13, City face Liverpool, so I think we'd be looking elsewhere. Saka against West Ham and Burmo against Leicester. Palmer against Aston Villa will probably be where I'd look to go. Game week 14, Palmer against Southampton again. And game week 15, I think it goes back to Haaland probably being the best captain from then on. But yeah, in general, I think if you're going for 3 premiums, make sure you have one of Haaland or Salah, because that covers you for most game weeks for captaincy. After that, I think Palmer's actually looking really good here for potential captaincy, and Saka maybe in 13, but I think you can cover game week 13 with a Brian Mbeumo captain at home against Leicester. So there you go. Those are my captain picks for the next 6 game weeks. And yeah, as you can probably tell, yes, it favours Salah in the short term, but I don't think it makes Salah essential necessarily for this run. So, game of opinions, as always. Let's keep going. Because I've made a Game Week 10 wildcard draft. So, this is what I've come up with. This team costs 10.8 million. I hope most of you guys will be able to afford this right now if you are on a wildcard, or even if you're just trying to build towards something that's a little like this. I go for Raya in goal for the Arsenal defensive cover. He's the cheapest way to get guaranteed minutes from that Arsenal defence, who do have some good fixtures coming up from Game Week 12 onwards. I'd like to get there fairly soon. Alexander-Arnold will stay in the team. I quite like him for the long term. Alex Moreno is going to be one of our defenders. He rotates very nicely with Luca Digne, who is on the bench. Ait Nouri will be a set and forget defender here as well with his attacking ability. In midfield, I've gone for Salah, Palmer and Saka. Now, this is only because it's a wildcard team. That's not to say that, you know, you need to have these players. You could just as easily make a wildcard draft with Haaland in instead. But if you had unlimited transfers on a wildcard, I would probably edge towards Salah at this exact moment. So I know that sounds a little bit, you know, like I'm contradicting myself, but transfers have value, okay, guys? Transfers have value, and this is a wild card where transfers don't have any value. But yes, Palmer and Saka in here as well as your other 2 premiums. So a 3-mium setup here with Mbeumo and perhaps controversially a Semenyo in here, who I really like from Game Week 11 onwards. Up front, Raul Jimenez and Nicholas Jackson, who I love from Game Week 12. On the bench, Fabianski, Welbeck, whose fixtures turn very nice very soon. Digne, as we mentioned, and Vandenberg as your your 4 million cheap defender. Now, the one maybe issue with this team is that it potentially plans for the future a little bit too much. If you prefer to go for those immediate gains, then maybe you'd invest in more Wolves. Maybe you'd invest in, I don't know, a little bit more Brentford, perhaps, instead of like a Welbeck or a Jackson. Go for a Wissa there. If you could maybe go for, I don't know, Smith Rowe instead of Semenyo, but this is what I would do. I'm a planner, okay, guys? Deal with it. I like to plan my FPL going forward. So this is what my wildcard would look like if I was to wildcard in Game Week 10. But I think Game Week 11 and 12 look like slightly better weeks to play that wildcard chip. And let's finish off with the predicted points. Salah has got the highest predicted points this week, according to the Fantasy Football Hub predicted points algorithm. Haaland coming in second here, so it is tight. Salah 8.1, Haaland 7.7, pretty tight here. Palmer slightly behind there with 7 predicted points, which I guess makes him an outside captain shout. Saka 6.7 against Newcastle. Raul Jimenez in 5th for 5.7 million is absolutely amazing. And of course, Cunha, the hype man of the week, 5.6 predicted points for him. So yeah, there are some really cheap forwards here that have good projections for this game week. Very nice indeed. I think one thing that puts Raul Jimenez and Cunha above a lot of the other forwards is that each of these players has good assist potential as well as goal scoring potential, which is very, very useful. Strikers, the goals are the main thing, but in FPL, if you can supplement that with some creativity, that is always very, very useful indeed as well, which is why Raul and Cunha are being spoken about so much at the moment. But there we go, guys. That is, I think, everything we need to cover in today's video. If there are any questions or things that I missed out today, please do feel free to ask me a question in the comment section. I've been really good with replying to comments recently, so keep them coming in and I'll keep trying to respond to you guys and help you out as much as I can. If you enjoyed this one, please do drop a like. It massively helps out the channel. Do subscribe if you're new around here and want the roundup every single week ahead of the deadlines. And check out another video if you'd like to as well. But until then, I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.